Good morning. The House Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture and Rural Development and Natural Resources will come to order. Thank you all for joining us today. Mr. Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Grixey.
Here.
Representative Martis.
Here.
Representative Puri.
Here.
Representative McKinney.
Here.
Representative Menser.
Here.
Representative Borton.
Here.
Representative Alexander.
Here.
All members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative McKinney moves to adopt the minutes from the prior meeting. There being no objection, the motion prevails. This morning, we are going to have a lovely, long-awaited presentation from MSU. So Dr. George Smith, who's the Director of AgBioResearch, and Dr. Quentin Tyler, the Director of MSU Extension, are going to give us a presentation. Thank you, gentlemen. George, do you want to start?
Thank you, Chair Brixey. Actually, my esteemed colleague's going to start.
Yeah, so, it's definitely an honor to be here, and to represent the 600 or so colleagues that I have in the MSU Extension all across the state, in all 83 counties. And as you think about, MSU Extension and AgBioResearch, our respective missions are to provide solutions to improve the lives of individuals, families, communities, and businesses. As we think about, those challenges, our respective communities are facing, one of those challenges is climate resiliency. As we think about, climate resiliency, there's no singular answer to fix the problem, to this ever-changing environment. And as you think about, in particular, this quote, really speaks to Dr. Smith and myself. This quote is by Bond. And Bond is a South Korean politician and actually the former Secretary General for the United Nations, and also the current chair for the Global Green Growth Initiative. And he says climate change is the single greatest threat to sustainable future, but at the same time, addressing the climate challenge presents a golden opportunity to promote prosperity, security, and a brighter future for all. As you think about food security, it's not just a problem that's facing developing countries. We already, encountered a challenge as research and extension across the globe of feeding, 9 billion people by the year 2050. But here in the United States, as you think about climate variability, it threatens our food security. And if we don't adapt or grow crops that thrive in these new environments, we're definitely in trouble. Climate variability is also, it's a global issue, and the world is watching, particularly here in Michigan. We have the second most diverse agricultural state in terms of commodity in the U.S. And people hear the term, we're the most diverse state with a reliable source of water. And for me, we have the golden opportunity to be a leader in addressing these wicked problems.
And AgBioResearch and MSU Extension are strategically positioned to address these problems in a manner that benefits Michigan agriculture and equally or more important, Michiganders who live in our great state as a whole. AgBioResearch has an over 135-year history of doing practical research to benefit farmers in the state. That remains a key component of our mission today, but when you talk about the work we do in today's terms, those 300 scientists do research that's focused on delivering dynamic solutions for our agriculture and food systems in the environment. And that speaks strongly to the mission of the Climate Agricultural Resiliency Program.
And also, if you think about, George mentioned a key term, and that key term is trust. MSU Extension has been in our communities for over 100 or so years. And what makes us truly unique is that we take that information, right, that the research scientist has, and we put it into an easily translatable form that our people can use and utilize to, again, to improve their lives, improve their communities, improve their families, improve their businesses.
So our impact isn't achieved by working in isolation. The missions of AgBioResearch and Extension are directly connected to deliver those solutions our agriculture community needs. But really the key to our success is the broader partnerships in general. the long-standing partnerships we have with our agricultural community, folks that produce the 300 different commodities that make Michigan special, and the relationships we have with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. We have a long-standing history of working with the department on kind of additional programs like this new program, which is so timely and so important to our agriculture industries in the state. And it wouldn't be possible without the support of our partners, you know, in the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And I want to make a special shout out to our director, Tim Boring, who's been a great partner in this effort and has been involved every step of the way as we've went into action after the appropriation was made in the current fiscal year and stood up these programs that we're excited to have you have the opportunity to share with you. So we are really joined at the hip in everything we do. That's been the key to the success, and that is the model for this new program, which is focused on research and outreach to address environmental sustainability and protection of Michigan water resources. More specifically, it's focused on climate change and helping agriculture do a better job in adaptation to climate change and make a bigger contribution to mitigation of climate change. You know, plants do a great job of pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere and sequestering that into soil. Soil health is important to productivity, which you'll hear from our stakeholder partners later on, and is also important to mitigating climate change. Also, this initiative helps us focus on the impact of climate change on plant health. As the climate changes, the bugs, the diseases that our producers face also change. And with the diversity of agriculture in this state and the microclimates that our producers take advantage of, that information is going to be absolutely critical to the future of our agriculture economy and our rural communities. And equally important, it's focused on water. Dr. Tyler mentioned we're the most diverse agricultural state in the country with a reliable source of water. I love that phrase. That so much describes Michigan agriculture, but with that comes responsibility. Responsibility to make sure we're utilizing the water we have efficiently, and we are protecting our natural resources, which really make Michigan special, our Great Lakes, our inland lakes. So my children, my children's children, and their children can enjoy the beauty and all that makes Michigan special. This investment is foundational to that, and we are committed to delivering the solutions that Michigan agriculture needs. So we were thrilled with the investment in the 2024 budget that the state of Michigan made. $1 million in recurring funding to support faculty and extension positions, and a one-time $5 million allocation for a competitive grants program. So a little bit about how this whole initiative started. You know, Quentin and I can't take credit for this. We were fairly early in our new roles, and we had went and met with our partners in the plant-based agriculture industries in the state. Said, what are your biggest challenges for the future? What can we do together to help you? Resoundingly, the answer was climate change. This is a cross-cutting issue that affects all of our commodities and water. They were the inspiration for the initiative. They've been talking about this a long time, and I know they've worked really hard to sell the initiative. So we are committed to delivering on that promise, but the concept was created by our industry partners. And they asked Quentin and I, hey, what can MSU do to help solve these problems? We put the proposal together, which you all saw last year, resulting in this transformational first investment. And it really positions MSU at the forefront of climate and water research while delivering practical solutions to growers. That's the goal. That's a goal we are committed to delivering upon. This investment has also catalyzed some initial investments from the university as well, which we're going to talk about here in the next slide. And the other key component of the program was the competitive grants program. We had some needs in terms of expertise. We got tremendous talent to solve these multidisciplinary problems, but some gaps to fill. And then our investigators need money to be able to do the research and extension programs in a Michigan-centric context. So the other key part of this program was the $5 million one-time investment in a competitive and grants program. We worked to develop a quickly a request for proposals in partnership with our Plant Coalition partners and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, issued that RFP. We received 18 fantastic proposals that address a lot of the issues that are really critical and foundational to this whole program, whether it be water, whether it be soil health, focusing on the diversity of crops and commodities to make Michigan special. Research will be multidisciplinary, has to be a strong field-based component, and emphasize sustainable approaches such as regenerative agriculture. So the response to this RFP was overwhelming. Over 60 people on a webinar in January, we had to talk about the program. Received 18 proposals. We had the ability to fund 4. Those 4 proposals are just the start. They are a start, but there'll be more work to be accomplished even after these projects are completed.
So Dr. Smith talked about the $5 million in terms of the grant program, but again, in this ever-changing environment, you know, we have some outstanding faculty and staff at Michigan State University, but we still don't have the talent and the expertise to fill in the gaps in terms of this ever-changing environment. So again, with the $1 million from the state of Michigan, we embarked on the initiative to hire 6 new faculty and 2 extension educators. And these faculty and these educators will be housed in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. In addition to that, as we talk about the investment from the state, we're able to leverage the investment from the state to additional $1.5 million from the MSU Office of Research and Innovation will help support startup costs for each of these positions. As you think about the importance of these faculty positions, you know, we talk about research, but these positions will have a 60% research component, but also a 40% extension component. And the reason why it's important to state that, because they will do research, but this research has to be applied, has to be applicable, and has to provide solutions to the folks that are out there within the state. In addition to that, we're able to leverage these 6 positions for 6 additional positions that were funded and to be hired with the support from the MSU Office of the Provost. Now, in particular, as we talk about, you know, we listened and we learned from our stakeholders, but also we listened to those within the department about the specific needs in terms of these positions. So these faculty positions in particular, this one will be studying groundwater use and availability for agriculture, invest in water quality with emphasis on nutrient flow and retention in surface water and soil, determining the economic impact of climate change on Michigan farms and programs focused on climate change adaptation and mitigation. And this is really important because, again, if our producers are going to embark on these new initiatives, they got to understand the financial risk that's going to be involved in this. In addition to that, a position exploring life cycle analysis of agricultural systems, in particular greenhouse gas emissions, impact of management, cost of inputs with the goal of identifying return on investments for farmers, and also modeling the impact of climate change on pest emergence and management, and modeling climate-smart agriculture management practices using remote sensing, climate data, soil information, and more. And again, as we talk about, you know, the faculty piece, it's equally important to have that information that gets out within the community. And that's why the extension educators piece is really important. As you can see, they're going to be developing programming as a result of this research, focused on conservation-focused crop production. They improve soil health and carbon sequestration, and also leading educational efforts on how precision agriculture approaches such as remote sensing and statistical models that can improve soil health and reduce input cost.
So Dr. Tyler and I, in partnership with the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, our industry partners, quickly went into action after the appropriation was made in the current fiscal year to stand up these programs, to initiate the search processes for the faculty we mentioned, and really get this program rolling. We are off to a great start. We look forward to an opportunity in the future to tell you more about the grants that were actually funded and their impact. We'd love the opportunity in the future to talk more about the faculty that are hired, the tremendous talent we're attracting to Michigan State can fill in those gaps, which we have, and help solve these complex problems. And we, you know, the grants program, it's going to make a difference, but the reality is it's just a start. We are committed to delivering on our promise to Michigan agriculture and citizens of the state of Michigan. We will do what we can with the funding provided, but in order to deliver on that investment and provide those solutions that Michigan agriculture needs to be able to remain productive in the face of a changing climate, and those solutions that Michiganders as a whole need and deserve, additional support is going to be required. And we're hopeful that there's a path forward for that in the future. So both for the grants program and to sort of shore up that investment in talent and people we talked about. So with that, Dr. Tyler and I are happy to answer any questions you have before we pivot and you hear from our stakeholders who are with us today who can really talk about the importance of this initiative and how climate is impacting their farms.
Do any of our members have questions before we go on to Rep. Menser? Oh, okay, sorry.
So I just have a kind of a rant. I read recently how the lack of snow cover in Michigan is actually affecting farm soil because it doesn't give it that insulation, and the microbes that in the soil, die off and aren't able to, regenerate, which makes our soil less fertile. And then, I was thinking about that, and I figure you guys have a solution for that. But I also, as I kind of mentioned to you both previously, I was lucky enough to tour, the BioResearch Center, and I was absolutely just floored by the research stations you had for different crops and the different UV rays. So here you've got a girl that loves to grow things and a girl that loves science, and I'm like, you guys are awesome. And it was just, it's just, to me, it's going to be very, very important that you guys get the funding you need, because you are standing between us and a food deficit. You're standing between us and the lack of green spaces and the lack of trees. And when I say standing between us, I mean, human beings, because we're causing a lot of this, aren't we? So I'm just going to come right out on record, Chair Brixey, and say, give them all their money, dang it.
Okay, well, boy, that was a pretty big, rousing speech of support. I appreciate that. Rep. Alexander?
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. And thank you, doctors, for your presentation. And of course, I come from Michigan's undiscovered, the Third Peninsula in the Thumb, which is a high food and fiber area. And I have a twofold question. Most importantly, it's important that we recognize that this actual budgetary item is coming out of the higher ed budget. So it's not necessarily all of what we're doing here. But are you concerned with the loss of hundreds of thousands of acres in food and fiber production based on the implementation of the solar projects that are proposed? Secondary to that, and will these solar farm, the areas, affect the ambient soil and air temperature around these areas? Because we have the infrastructure that was taken by eminent domain in the Thumb.
Representative, I appreciate your question. My answer would be we need to be concerned about farmland in general. So the solar thing, that's a separate issue for another time, I think, but we are concerned about the loss of farmland in general, because you can't produce more farmland. That's why this whole program focused on soil health is absolutely critical to preserve our farms, to make sure they have healthy soils, to make sure yields can increase in the future. So that's what this program is all about, helping our farmers stay productive in the face of a changing environment and extreme weather. You don't have to look any further than the weather in February in this state. Some of our agriculture industries are already impacted and have already lost their crops or significant parts of their crops because of the weather. So we're focused on the goals of this initiative, and healthy soil is critical to the long-term sustainability of agriculture.
And I think also to add, I think, it's about options, right? And the financial profitability of it. And that's these additional positions will provide, expertise in weighing the risks, the pros and the cons of making certain decisions as it relates to weather variability. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions before we move on? No other questions. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the informative update, and I would point out to Rep. Alexander that there is an ask in this budget, and so they have presented us with that ask. This is a two-pronged ask. The last year when we looked at this, we were kind of looking at this program very much in the same manner that the Project Green program was, where it was born and started in the ag budget and then moved over a series of years to the higher ed budget. Okay, so next up we have farmers. Are they going to come up together or separate?
I was going to introduce them.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Representative, we just appreciate the opportunity. As we talk about MSU Extension and AgBioResearch, we believe we're in a partnership. And the first individual I'd like to introduce is Jeanie. She's a fourth-generation farmer at Hawkins Homestead. She wears many hats in Ingham County, where she's on the County Farm Bureau and the Policy Development Committee, and the Farmland and Open Space Preservation Board and the Aurelius Township Planning Commission. At the state level, she's a member of Michigan Farm Bureau Feed Grain Oilseed Advisory Committee. She's going to speak on the importance of this particular initiative and some challenges and opportunities in which she's experiencing. Thank you.
Hi, as he said, I am Jeanie. We've had a farm, it's been in our family since 1862. It started with my great-grandfather. Now, when he started it, they did moldboard plowing, and then they would disc it. And so they had that challenge there. In the 1960s, we were a dairy farm. My dad and my uncle were farming. They went to chisel plowing, which is a little less invasive than the moldboard plowing. And then in 1979, we sold the cows, and we went straight to just crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans. And then we had a rotation of that because that's best for the soil, so you'd never have like corn 2 years in a row in the same fields, because we were looking at soil health. If we don't take care of the soil in our ground that we're working with, our water and everything, it's not going to take care of us, and it isn't going to be a generational farm if we don't take care of our assets. In 1991, my husband and I came and we joined the farm. My husband's actually a Wisconsin dairy farmer that I imported. We brought him over to the home farm. We presently farm about 2,500 acres in Aurelius Township and 3 townships around it here in Ingham County. So I am a local. We no-till our farm now, so we aren't plowing at all. We have specialized equipment that we can go out there, and if we have soybean stubble left from the previous year, we'll take our corn planter and we plant right through it. So we are not working it down. It's keeping our erosion down. It's also giving us more organic matter. So it's making our farm a little more sustainable. Another part of being sustainable is we do grass waterways if we have an erosion problem, because we do have some hills. So we try to make sure we're not losing our soil that way. The no-till also keeps it so we aren't losing it to wind erosion. I mean, the last few days have been quite windy. Our soil isn't going anywhere. It's staying right where it's supposed to be. So we also are part of PA 116, which most of you probably know what that is since it's a state program, and that's to keep our farm in agriculture. I look at that along with the preservation board that I'm on in trying to help farmers keep the ground so we can keep working it. Our technology over the years has really advanced. We do soil testing on our ground. About half of it we do every year, and we're checking for not only the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, the NPK that we used to check for back in the years, but now they check for micronutrients. We know what our rotation is going to be. We're making sure that when we are fertilizing, we're only putting on what that crop needs. We aren't going to go to the store and buy a great big bag of fertilizer and just dump the whole thing on. We're going to make sure that we put on just what it needs. We have records that get put onto our flash drive. Those go into our fertilizer spreader, so that if this 2 acres needs 4 pounds, it gets 4 pounds, but the one next to it might not need any. It doesn't get any. So we're not over-fertilizing. We're very conscious of that because fertilizer costs money, chemicals cost money. We don't want to waste money. We don't want to waste product. We don't want it going where it's not supposed to be. On our spraying, my husband has a sprayer that has a 90-foot boom on it. I mean, you think about how big it is. That's what, over 3 times what a road is width. He can program that so he is only overlapping an inch when he's spraying. So he's not overspraying things. They're also coming up with technology. I was just recently down in Houston at the Commodity Classic, which is the corn growers, wheat growers, soybean growers, sorghum growers, and the equipment manufacturers. And they're coming up with new technologies that recognizes the weeds on the spray boom and only sprays the weeds. So you're not spraying the whole field to get rid of these weeds. It's spot spraying where it's needed. So another way that we can be more economically feasible and also environmentally, you know, we're looking at the environment saying we want to protect it. All of our equipment now has a lot of electronics and technology. In just our combine, which we use for harvesting, it's got 3 computers. We're monitoring what the yield is, we're monitoring what the soil is, the temperatures, we're monitoring the moisture that's in the crop, so we can tell what we're getting. We're getting maps off of this so we can see where the trouble spots are in the field, so that we can go out and say, okay, we had a problem in field A at this point, let's go fix that spot. So we're not looking at the broad thing, we're looking at individual little pockets and saying, what's our problem here? All of our fields are system tiled because Michigan is a swamp. I mean, we love our Michigan, but it is wet, so we are system tiled. And that's another thing that we do to help make our ground more sustainable. We're always upgrading our equipment. We work with precision planting, and like this year, we're actually having 2 units on our 16-row planter that are going to be an experiment to see if they can work better than what we have, because we do have rocks. That's our most concrete problem we have, is every year we have rocks. And we actually have what's called like a huge lawn roller that we go out there after we plant and we push the rocks back down so that they don't break our equipment in the fall. Our weather is different. I mean, I can remember being a kid back in the 60s and 67, and we had a blizzard. We didn't go to school for a whole week. Yay. And then 78, same thing. We used to ride snowmobiles all the time. We don't even have them now because we'd never pull them out. A year like this, there was no snowmobiling. Our weather is constantly changing, and we have to adapt to it. When my dad was planting corn back in the 60s and 70s, the yield, if they got 100 bushels an acre, they were ecstatic. Now if we get 100 bushels an acre, it's a crop failure. I mean, even with this weird year that we had last year, we had that drought until beginning of July, and then we got rain. Our farm still averaged over 190 bushels of corn per acre. That's due to research. That's due to adapting to our climate changing. We used to buy corn seed that would have 78 to 90 days between planting and maturity. We now plant at 98 to 104 days from planting maturity. It's a difference because we are warming up. My daughter is so into flowers. She was looking at one of the flower planting magazines. We used to be a zone 4. We're now zone 6A in some of those planting magazines. So things have been definitely changing. And with the change, we're also coming in with different diseases. A couple years ago, we had tar spot in our corn. That significantly reduced what our yield was. This past year, we had vomitoxin. It's out of a fungusy type thing, and it was due to the weather conditions. One of the problems with that is we sell some of our corn to the ethanol plants, and they make ethanol, and then they have the DDGs, the distiller's grain, that they feed animals. If it's too high in vomitoxin, the animals can't eat it because it's going to affect them in their weight gain, in their milk production, in their egg production, so it's not good. It's going to be toxic to them. So that meant that some of our corn was too high in vomitoxin, it got rejected. Then we had to ship it to a different place that didn't do the ethanol, so it cost us twice as much for shipping, and we got a lower price for it. So that's one of the problems. It's going to be a long-term one. I mean, we didn't have the vomitoxin problem when we weren't so warm. I mean, I don't remember my dad ever talking about vomitoxin when we had the dairy. We have it now. A lot of things from the south have moved up. We have more pests that are different than we used to have when my dad was first farming. And all this stuff we need research on, and it needs to be field tested, and that takes time. And that's why we need something that's sustainable long-term, like with Michigan State Extension, where they can do in-field trials. They can come out and say, okay, I need 10 acres of your field here, of your 100-acre field, and we're going to try this right on this 10 acres and see what the difference is. And that side-by-side trial is going to give us a lot better information than, okay, we're going to try this, but you know, we only have 1 year research on it. Let's go for it. We want something that's going to be tried and true, that's going to help us with our farm. We're in the process now of handing this farm over to the next generation. My 26-year-old daughter and son-in-law are going to be joining us on the farm. In fact, we met with an extension agent yesterday for 3 hours trying to figure out how we're going to get this farm transitioned to them and if it's going to be sustainable for them to be able to farm. Because they love the farm, they want to keep it going, they want to be the 5th generation on the farm, but we need this research that's going to help us keep that farm viable. Because it's not my dad's farm anymore. It's not the same as it was in the 70s or the 80s. It's a new farm. Same area, new farm. So, you know, they talked a little bit about this year's climate. We don't grow wheat anymore, but I do have friend farmers that do grow wheat. And one of the things they were concerned about is we didn't get the snow cover on the wheat this year. That snow cover insulates the wheat, so if we had a hard frost or a big freeze, they aren't going to have winter kill. So that's one of the things that, you know, if you have a winter crop, you're going to have to worry about is this change in climate. So that's kind of what I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
I do have a question I can't resist. Does vomit toxin make you vomit?
No, it does not. It does not. That's just the name they have for it. They call it vomitoxin.
Okay, couldn't resist. Thank you so much, Janine, and thank you for your testimony and also for your efforts in Ingham County with the farmland preservation. I know you've been involved with that for a long time. Members, do we have any questions? Thank you very much. Quentin, you want to tell me who's up next?
Yeah, so Jeanie, I want to thank Jeanie for what she does and for feeding the people in the state, so thank you. So next we have Raul Gomez. Raul Gomez is the son of migrant workers who settled in Michigan shortly after his father died. He is now a managing partnership for Third Coast Fruit Farm, a division of Wunsch Farms on Old Mission Peninsula. Raul.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. So we farm 350 acres that's owned and overall 1,600 acres that's leased or custom managed. So. And then 5 years ago, I decided it would be a good idea to go out and buy my own farm. So I used to have a lot more hair. So some of the concerns that, you know, even today, or thinking of our current situation with, you know, the ever-changing temperature, it's colder, you know, might get hot tomorrow, is for us is we're pretty soon coming into bloom. And then we're going to have to get honeybees, which we rent out. Most of the places that we get honeybees from move their bees. Right now, they may be in Florida, they may be in California. We have early springs like this where, you know, we might end up where they have to move their bees or they can't because they're still at a different job. It's going to become an issue that, you know, we're not too sure how we'll deal with. You know, there's people that can try to raise bees, but it's, you know, we've tried it. It's not very easy, and it's a lot more work. So we've also, you know, as far as climate, we're trying to look for, so our big operation is hand-picked black sweet cherries. We grow and pack sweet cherries, and we grow over 12 different varieties. And one of our issues, and talking to some of the MSU researchers, is finding new trees, finding rootstocks, or varieties that'll work for us. 8 years ago, we planted a cherry that was called Sweetheart. We had about 50% die-off because it wasn't very winter hardy. And in the last 5 years, it's become one of our best cherry just because we're not getting such a harsh winter. Gray area, good thing, bad thing, we're getting it to work, but that is one of the importance of creating models. And I feel that with ag, that is one of the big things. Everything that's, that we figure out or we find a solution for is based on models. This is something that does not have that much research, or we have models to base it on. For us in agriculture, we try to be proactive. If we're being, if we're finding the solution at the end to try to make something survive, it's probably too late. So, being reactive in these situations in our line of work is never really a good thing. Like I said, we grow out in Old Mission Peninsula, so we're actually very lucky to be surrounded by water. And at times, now thinking about it, we take that for granted. Irrigation, watering, it's never been a big issue for us, besides cost. But it's becoming more and more costly, and also as we try to preserve and be good stewards of our land, it's very important for us. So we started some small research on our own, working with some companies to do probes. So where we normally just kind of go, we're going to water 8 hours a day, every other day, and call it good. Now we're getting up to the minute, to my phone, to our computers. How much water is there? Are we overwatering? Does it need more water? And that also goes along with fertilizers. In Old Mission Peninsula, we're growing stuff in sand. So soil health is big for us in trying to maintain our costs down and not over just pouring fertilizers and different chemicals into the ground. So this type of research, this type of technology has been very helpful for us, not only from the cost perspective, but also utilizing our water and also trying to build up our soil without having to pour a bunch of money and then also unnecessary things into our soil. We're looking at how do we water but also maintain moisture, wood chipping, composting, something that for us, it was never really something we looked at when we were earlier farming, because we were like, oh, we'll go and spray or spread some fertilizer, call it a day. We moved from doing soil samples where you go and pick a spot, take a soil sample. Now we're grid sampling, so we know that not the entire 10 acres needs this nutrient, needs this fertilizer, only specifically here. I was here about 2 weeks ago with the Michigan Fruit School and got to talk to a lot of the researchers about what we're seeing and things we're concerned about. And as far as timing and will we be able to do this in 10 years? How does this look? We joke that we might end up becoming avocado farmers, but is it going to get that? It's going to get temperatures that are going to be that high, or our shrinking windows for harvest. Last year we left 40% of our Honeycrisp apples behind because we had 2 freezing days in October that made it the apples start breaking down internally. So once that happens, we will not be able to harvest. So we're looking at shorter harvest windows where we had 4 weeks to pick. Now we're looking at 2, maybe 3, if we don't have those incidents of that cold weather. And I think this is important. We, especially MSU, we've always had a really good relationship, offering, different acreage, working with them on different projects. What can we do? How do we help you, or what are you seeing? And this is one of those things where we really want to get ahead and look at what we can do, and how do we make it to where, again, like my kids will be able to farm as well. So that, if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Appreciate your testimony this morning. Does members, do we have any questions for Mr. Gomez? No? Thank you for sharing your struggles with us and your successes.
Thank you, Raul, for your words, and thank you for feeding the people in the state. So next up, we have Ben Schilling. He co-owns and operates the McClung Farm and Schilling Family Farms near St. Joseph. His family has been providing fruit and vegetables to Michigan residents for more than 150 years.
Chair Brixey and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Ben Schilling, and I'm here to lend my support to the Agricultural Climate Resiliency Program's request for investment and additional funding. Together, my wife, Bay, my brother, Mark, and his wife, Abby, own Schilling Family Farms and McClung Farms in Berrien County in southwest Michigan. We focus on fresh market fruit and vegetables, growing over 30 different crops, with the majority of our acreage in tomatoes and apples. My brother and I are sixth-generation growers, and his wife, Abby, is a third-generation grower. My wife, Bay, did not come from a farming background. She grew up in Melbourne, Australia, and spent 13 years in corporate and nonprofit roles prior to farming with me. I wasn't always a farmer, though. After obtaining my bachelor's degree in agribusiness management from Michigan State University, I led a corporate career for 17 years, primarily with GPS ag technology companies. I was fortunate enough to live and work abroad for many years and experience agriculture in many countries throughout Asia, Australia, Europe, North and South America. This has given me a greater appreciation for the uniqueness of Michigan's microclimates, soil health, and abundant supply of water. I started in the early days of the introduction of automated steering control and have maintained a keen interest in farming innovation, technology, chemistry, and best practices. These advances provide growers with the ability to reduce soil compaction, fuel consumption, chemical and fertilizer application and water use, resulting in increased soil health and responsible water use. What might seem like a small innovation and change best practice, for example, reducing overlap from many inches to just 1, improving chemical efficacy by a portion of a percent, might not seem like much. Applied over hundreds of millions of acres globally each year, the impact is hugely significant. In the 6 years since I started farming, our farms in Michigan have experienced multiple of what my father would refer to as historically out of the norm weather-related events. I've experienced multiple hail events, decimating large acreages of fresh market vegetables and orchard fruit production. This causes immediate mortality for some plants and delayed mortality of others. Through the introduction of disease pressure, some plants are not able to recover from, despite our best efforts with the knowledge base of best practices currently available. Soil health has also been affected. During critical growing months, we've experienced both sustained periods of drought and frequent, very intense rains, both of which can increase disease pathogen pressures in the soil in their own way. Warmer than normal winters with record-breaking high temperatures in January and February and rapid temperature increases and drops can lead to a lower chance of sustained and deep ground freezes. This allows last year's disease pathogens and pests to survive into the coming year, negatively affecting soil health. The temperatures also affect the ability for the orchards to set crops. The MSU Southwest Michigan Research and Extension Center has indicated that the rapid temperature drop down to -7 in southwest Michigan in mid-January this year has caused the loss of the majority of the peach crop in the area. Our farm has lost peaches in 4 of the last 6 years. If these events are indeed the new norm, growers and our communities need to be better prepared, educated, and equipped to adapt and overcome these challenges. As a grower, we are stewards of our land and water supplies. We depend on them, and we strive to continuously improve our sustainable use of them. To help us in this endeavor, we will look to projects like the Agricultural Climate Resiliency Program at MSU to drive and generate the science and data we need to make effective, responsible, and sustainable decisions. For these reasons, I would ask for your support for the additional funding for the Agricultural Climate Resiliency Program to help growers like my family and the next and future generations of growers protect Michigan's unique and precious agricultural resources. Thank you for your time.
Rep. Menser.
Gonna do it again. So one of the really cool things I saw when I was able to tour the AgBioResearch Center is they had there was a display of different types of soil in little, I don't know, trays, right? And they simulated a rainfall of how much rain in so many minutes. And it was really amazing to me what happened to that water, what happened to that rain, that runoff with these different types of soil. What held it, what ran off right away, what turned, just simply turned into mud. And as you mentioned, that we're having prolonged periods of hot, dry weather and periods of heavy, heavy rainfall. So it is imperative for research like this to make a difference in the crops. So again, I'm going to rant about give them their money. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions from any other members? Yes.
So here's some research that I really, really need you to do. I like to grow beefsteak tomatoes at home because everyone knows BLTs are perfect with a beefsteak tomato. I like to grow some early girls too. I need some research on how to keep the damn squirrels away from my tomatoes. Please.
We have to work on that as well. For food safety reasons, we have to make sure, there's no animal presence in the fields. So I understand where you're coming from.
That spurred a question that Rep. Alexander has. Is it going to be about pests?
Thank you very much. Actually, no, I just want to commend all three of you for you got involved in precision planning with the herbicide application and pesticide and fertilizer. It's important to recognize that it is a good portion of the percentage of fertilizer and pesticide application that provides the funding for meat technicians for meat verification. So that's a program that's funded by you guys. You're doing a good job, and you're doing it in a way that's good for the environment. So I commend you for those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything final to add? Anybody from MSU?
No, we just want to take the time, to thank our folks for taking time out of their day to be here today, and also thank you all for allowing us, to tell our story and to tell the importance and the impact of this particular initiative. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to our farmers for traveling both short and long distances to join us this morning. We really appreciate it. Okay. Representative Martis moves to excuse, there are no absent members, so there being no further business before the committee, we're adjourned.